Welcome to the First Player Token Podcast, a short podcast for folks who enjoy playing board games with family and friends. I'm your host, Derek Bruff. In this episode, we learn what to do in the unlikely event that someone gives you a panda in Takenoko. One of the things I love about board games is the visual design. A beautifully illustrated game board or colorful components not only catch the eye, but can draw me into a game. On today's episode, we review a game with a fantastic visual design. In fact, it was the look of the game that got my attention when I saw it a few years ago on Instagram. The game is called Takenoko. It's a 2011 game designed by Antoine Bauza and published by Bombyx Studios. And it's more than just pleasant to look at. There's a lot of good game in this very pretty package. To review Takenoko, I have a very special guest on the podcast today. Jared Richardson is the co-host of Level With Us, a podcast where Jared and his brother Marcus have a cozy video game discussion every week. Most of the games I play are analog, not digital, but I did pick up a Nintendo Switch earlier this year so I could connect more with the 11-year-old. And Level With Us has been my podcast companion in exploring the world of video games. I really love what Jared and Marcus do on the podcast. As reviewers of games, they are warm, funny, and concise. And I do love a short podcast. Recently, I reached out to Jared to see if he would be a guest on the First Player Token podcast. He said yes and asked if there were any games I was already planning to review in upcoming episodes. Takenoko was on that list, and he jumped at the chance to talk with me about it. We had a great conversation about the game, which I'm excited to share with you now. I am very excited to have a guest on the First Player Token podcast. Today on this episode, we have Jared Richardson. He is the co-host of Level With Us, a podcast where Jared and his brother Marcus have a cozy video game discussion every week. And it's one of my favorite podcasts. I actually don't play a lot of video games myself, although I've started to dabble now that my stepson is into that space. But I still love listening because it's such a great podcast, and I love the coziness of it all. So thank you, Jared, for being on my podcast today.
Oh, thank you so much, Derek. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the First Player Token podcast, and I used to listen to it on my commutes, like for a whole year before starting Level With Us. So it's a pleasure to join you finally. Yeah, thanks.
That's it's anyone who listens to my podcast, I'm a fan of. So it's a small group. So Level With Us is so I have a kind of big picture question for you first, Jared.
Sure.
So Level With Us is a podcast about video games, but I know you also enjoy playing board games. And I'm wondering if those two different types of games play different roles in your life.
Yeah, I guess for me it's kind of an ebb and flow. Sometimes I'm really into my video games, and sometimes I'm really into my board games, and I'm constantly flipping back and forth. But whenever I find a board game-based video game, then I get super hooked, because it's just the best of both worlds. So something like Slay the Spire or Tharsis, or Armello. Those are really fun board game type video games. But yeah, I'd say they're both equally fun to me. The thing with board games is I have to find other people to play, which isn't always possible. Whereas I can always, play my video games.
Yeah.
So
yeah, either solo or online or. Yeah, and I will say, so I had mentioned on Twitter that I was trying to dip my toe into the waters of the Switch, and particularly indie games there. And you'd recommended Tharsis, which I have now played and enjoyed. And,
awesome!
Died horribly. I haven't beaten it yet, but
it's hard. It's really hard.
I was doing well, and then they doubled the difficulty level halfway through, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to strategize a little more. Well, when I invited you on my podcast, I asked you if there was a family-friendly game that you really like that you might talk about, and you picked out Takenoko. So tell us, Jared, tell us a little bit about Takenoko and why it's one of your favorite board games.
Oh man, so story time. Takenoko was a game I played several years ago, I was serving a mission for my church over in Chicago, and we were visiting a family there, and they just had an entire wall just chock full of board games. It was the dream, right? Like, it was like, oh, this is what I want my house to look like someday. And once a week, we'd go over and play a game with them. And one week, we played Takenoko. And I could be misquoting this, but I think one of them said, oh yeah, it's kind of like Settlers of Catan, but really fun. And nothing against Catan, but after playing Takenoko, I concur. I thought it was super, super fun, so much so that when I got home, I was always on the lookout for it, and never really got around to buying it until I got married. And I'm pretty sure it was the first game I put on my wedding registry, or the first thing I put on my registry.
Okay.
Yes, before silverware and a toaster and all that. So because I just really wanted to play it with my wife. So and we did end up getting it. Yeah. So Takenoko is a 2 to 4 player game where you are building a bamboo garden over time. And there are certain things that happen as you're building this garden. There is weather effects that change how the bamboo grows. There's a big hungry panda that goes around eating the bamboo. And your goal is to impress the emperor. And so you're all competing for points. So you have these little goal cards that might be get 4 stacks of 3 pieces of green bamboo, or have the panda eat 2 yellow pieces of bamboo, etc. So you're all competing to get the most points, and it's a lot of fun. Really easy to pick up and play, but just enough complexity to enjoy it if you're a more seasoned player. And those are the kind of games that speak to me. I like games that I can play with my friends who aren't into board gaming, or with my little cousins or whoever, but still enjoy it myself. And that's kind of the types of games that I collect.
Yeah, I like that Takenoko is pretty accessible, and I can kind of play hard, or I can play easy, and it's still fun. And it's one of those games where I feel like when I do play it with adults, I realize there's a lot more happening than I usually see when I'm playing with 8-year-olds, and I have to be a little bit more strategic. So it scales up nicely. Yeah, and I like the comparison to Catan, and that, I mean, there's a lot of hexagons, certainly.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably the biggest comparison.
Yeah, but I think it's got a little more player interaction, which I like, and it's speedier, right? You can play in usually under an hour, which I think is nice, especially for short attention span kids. What do you think of the components of this game?
Oh man, it's so good. The production on this game is so good. I just pulled it out before we were about to record, and I was so impressed with the little figurines. Like, normally I've played a lot of games where they have figurines that size that are just really splotchy and not very detailed, but these look really good. The bamboo is kind of made of a faux wood. The colors, I know I'm not the one who runs the color commentary segment, but I love the overall palette for this game. Yeah. It's just really pretty to look at.
Yeah, it's got the kind of a lime green and a lemon yellow and a peach of some sort.
Grapefruit peach,
there we go. Yes.
Or pink, yeah.
Yeah. It's a lovely game, and it's eye-catching, right? Okay, so on Level With Us, you and Marcus have a little structure for your video game reviews, and I thought it would be fun to borrow that structure to help us talk about Takenoko.
Yeah, you can borrow it as long as you give it back after.
Okay, will do. So first, I think you do star pieces. What are star pieces, and what's your star piece for Takenoko?
Star pieces is the part of the show where we talk about a cool little detail or something we discovered that we really liked. And I was going to talk about the production, which we already kind of have, but one star piece that I'd love to bring up is that the front of the manual for the game is a big comic spread. And the story of the game is basically the Chinese emperor comes to visit the Japanese emperor, and they gift him with this big hungry panda. And the Japanese emperor doesn't know what to do with this panda, right. And he's like, "Gardener, go grow a bamboo garden for it." And that kind of sets the stage for the game to play out. And I just love that. I mean, they didn't have to do that. They could have just had the logo on the front of the page.
Well, my star piece is, you mentioned the weather as part of the game, and you have to roll this weather die, and it's got different weather on different sides. And And I can imagine the designer was thinking one of these results needs to be that the panda eats a little extra bamboo. But what weather would be associated with the panda eating more? And so they picked lightning. And I love, again, in the instruction book, they explain all this, right? That the lightning scares the panda, and he runs and hides and eats some bamboo as comfort food. And I just love that. It's so easy to remember in the game because, yeah, that's what a panda would do. He's got to have his little comfort food.
Just a little side note. Have you ever seen the movie The Emperor's New Groove?
I don't think so, but
okay.
I know it has a lot of fans. I think I missed it. I'm a little too old.
Gotcha. Never. Okay. Well, for the listeners who have seen it, there's a famous line in the movie where Yzma says, "Pull the lever, Kronk." And whenever we play this game, it's a house rule that you have to yell, "Roll the weather, Kronk," whenever you roll the weather die.
I love that. I do want to confirm something. So, star pieces, is that phrase taken from Mario Galaxy?
It's, those are star bits.
Star bits. Okay.
But they can, if that's the imagery that I conjure, that can be it. There's actually another game called Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door, which is one of my favorite games of all time, and those are like a little hidden collectible you find tucked in corners of the game.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of what we named the segment after.
Okay. Well, good. I'm glad to know that. A little behind the scenes here.
Yeah.
I was a big Mario Galaxy fan. I played it with my oldest when she was little all the time.
I love that game.
Yeah. Okay, so next is quick jabs. What are quick jabs?
Quick jabs is the part of the show where we get to complain a little bit. We get to whine about something that's usually really inconsequential and doesn't actually matter that much. So do you have a quick jab for this game?
I do. I think the irrigation system is a little confusing the first time you play. So the tiles that you build out start with a central tile, and any tile next to it is automatically irrigated. But beyond that, you have these little, they're blue wooden sticks is what they are, but they form like an irrigation system or pipeline. And I think new players just don't really see how that works, and they forget that it's important. And so almost every time they'll play down one of those goal cards that involves having some tiles of a particular color in a particular configuration that are all irrigated, and they've forgotten to irrigate because it doesn't occur to them. So that's the only part, because I find myself teaching this game a lot, and that's the part that I have to really kind of nuance so they understand how important that is.
That totally makes sense. And there's like easier ways to actually have an irrigated plot. Like there are certain tiles you can put down to instantly irrigate something.
Yeah.
So most games we play, the irrigation tiles are usually an afterthought. So I can definitely understand that.
Yeah. Do you have a quick jab for Takenoko?
Yeah. I love the stacks of bamboo. It's just so fun. You get to play with them. You get to build a little tower, but they topple over so easily. Maybe that's just my copy, but they're so loose that they're just constantly spilling out all over the table. And this is sort of, semi-related to that. In the box of the game, I put the game sideways on the shelf.
Oh, yeah.
And every time I open it up, all the bamboo is scattered everywhere. So I kind of wish there's an insert or something to just kind of keep them, because the compartments are really nice.
It works.
Leave the
it
box
works fine
open
horizontally. And you can dip into it when you're playing the game. It's a nice organizer, but vertically is a little mess.
Exactly. So I guess my quick jab is things spill way too much. It's a messy game.
Yeah.
But sometimes the best games are a little messy.
Exactly. It's just the price you pay for awesome bamboo components.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So I think your last segment is Who's the Fake Fan?
Yes.
So what is this segment, and are you ready to find out which of us is the fake fan?
I'm always a little nervous, even though it's completely meaningless. Who's the Fake Fan is the quiz segment of our podcast, where we try and find out who's the biggest nerd and who is the fakest fan of the game we're talking about. And I've got a little question for you.
Oh, okay. All right.
What does the word Takenoko mean?
Oh, no. Takenoko. I don't know this. I don't know if it's in the instruction manual, but I'm not going to look. I'm going to take a guess. Takenoko. I have to think it means something like bamboo garden. It's just on the nose. It's a bamboo garden.
You're so close. You're so close. You got half of it. So I think I'll give you a half point.
Half a point.
Takenoko. So take means bamboo, and then ko means child. So and then no is like a kanji that like unites the two. So basically, It means bamboo child or bamboo sprout. The reason I know that is, yes, it is in the rule book, but also my wife speaks Japanese, so she figured that out even before we read that part. So
wow,
but good guess. You got half of it, so that counts for something. Yeah. You're only half of a fake fan.
Half of a fake fan. Okay, so here's my question for you.
All right.
To see if you're a fake fan. So Takenoko was designed by French designer Antoine Bauza.
Right.
Can you name 3 other games designed by Antoine Bauza?
Man, I don't think I can even name one. Yeah, that's the thing. Is like I'm not that new to the board game hobby, but I am pretty new when it comes to following board game creators. So I'm just gonna spit out some random board game names and hope I get one of them right.
Okay.
So let's say, let's see here. What are some French games?
Well, I'll give you one hint.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll take a hint, please.
Okay. So Antoine Bauza, the designer, seems to be really captured by Japanese culture.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. In that case, let's put Tokaido on there. Is Tokaido
ding, ding,
one of them?
Tokaido is one of them, yes.
I have that one on my shelf too. That's a good one. Okay, I have to try and guess 2 more. What about that fireworks game? That fireworks card game, like it's not Hanafuda cards. But Blast or something? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do, and I'm going to give you credit for that because you said something that sounded like the right name, which is Hanabi.
Hanabi! That's right, that's why I was thinking Hanafuda. Yeah.
So Hanabi is the game where you can't see your own cards, but you can see everyone else's cards, and you're trying to play them in the right way to make fireworks. So,
awesome. Okay, I want to make one more guess.
Okay, yeah.
Is Suro designed by Antoine Bauza?
Good guess. Has this kind of, Asian theme. Starts with a T.
Yes.
it was not designed by Antoine Bauza.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, sorry. So you were hey, but you were only 1/3 a fake fan. So you got 2/3 of a point out of that.
Well, with some help from my good friend Derek.
So his biggest hit is the game 7 Wonders.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Yeah, which is not
7 Wonders is
Japanese
a timeless classic. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, and I have, the listeners can't see, but I actually have 2 of his other games on the shelf behind me right now. I picked up Samurai Spirit yesterday at the used bookstore, and then I have Draftosaurus back there too. He's very prolific. He has like over 100 games.
I just played Draftosaurus like yesterday.
Oh.
He made that game?
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Dude, this is so cool to learn about because I have so many of his games on the shelf.
Right.
We love Japanese themed games because my wife lived in Japan for part of her life. So we have Tokaido and Takenoko and Draftosaurus. So that is so cool to learn. And 7 Wonders Duel, I guess. Yeah. Well, now I have to look up his entire pedigree and start buying all of them, I guess.
Right. That's it for our interview. Thank you so much, Jared, for coming on First Player Token. This has been delightful, and I appreciate you sharing some thoughts on Takenoko.
Oh, thank you so much, Derek. It is such a pleasure. Anytime, I am always happy to join you. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much to Jared for coming on First Player Token and talking about Takenoko. I was delighted to learn that it was a favorite game for both of us. If you're not already listening to Jared's podcast, Level With Us, you should search for and subscribe to it. Jared and Marcus have a lot of fun reviewing digital games with regular segments like Star Pieces and Quick Jabs and Who's the Fake Fan. They do great casual banter, and they keep their episodes short, usually around 20 minutes. Jared is also an excellent audio engineer, so the sound quality is always top-notch. The podcast is called Level With Us. Look for it wherever you listen to podcasts. Back to Takenoko. Jared and I mentioned that it's a great family game, not just because of all the fun components, but also because it's fairly easy to learn. The box says that it's for players ages 8 and up, and that sounds about right. It might take younger players a couple of rounds to get the hang of it, but there's no reading required, and the iconography is pretty clear. There's a little bit of luck involved, particularly with the goal cards you draw, but that just means younger players can sometimes score some easy points. You can, however, mess up other players' plans, since everyone can help build the garden and move the panda and the gardener around, which might be a little frustrating for some players. Games usually last between 45 minutes and an hour, and you can play with 2, 3, or 4 players. And, of course, a panda. That's it for this episode of the First Player Token Podcast. See the show notes for links to past episodes and for photos of Takenoko. It really is lovely to look at. And hey, could you write and review this podcast wherever you listen to it while you're there subscribing to Level With Us? That would mean a lot and would help others find our podcasts. I've been your host, Derek Bruff. Thanks for listening. Now it's time to play some games.
Do some vocal warm-ups.
Right.
Marcus and I, our vocal warm-up is we both yell, "Enthusiasm! Enthusiasm!" as loud as we can.